Hello, part 29 of your series, Science of the Symbols. This is SGD, Sacred Geometry Decoded, and we are... Okay, where are we? Yep, okay, so this some of the title pages from this book, Clavis Artis, attributed to Zoroaster. So it was published around about 1699. Well, it varies, but oh, there's a typo there, attributed. But we have translated the year of our Lord, Anno Christi 1236, and it's attributed to Zoroaster. This date, well, it's good because it roughly matches, especially the influx of Arab Persian texts, alchemical texts into Europe. So that date, is by no means confirmed, but there's nice connections there because the Persian Arab alchemist as Gibi Ibn Hayam or Geba and Abu al-Qasim wrote books, and they wrote about earlier alchemists such as Zoroaster, Cleopatra the alchemist, Maria the Jewess, who were each famed for their work on the Philosopher's Stone, amongst other aspects. So Cleopatra the alchemist of Egypt, about 3rd century BC, the Philosopher's Stone, she's one of the women credited of achieving it, the alembic, this distillation tool, and she wrote the book on, or one of the earlier books on weights and measures, very hermetic. Maria the Jewess, also known Maria the Prophetess, so the Maria's bath and the Keratacus are still used now, and these were all described, written about before illustrations such as this got to Europe, so these technologies were well known. Zoroaster, the alchemist, and also famous figure. Now he's even included in the School of Athens painting by Raphael. He's there holding the globe. And Zoroaster, that's a picture now from that Clavis Artis text. Famous for the pelican flask, circulating distillation as well. Now this is a common theme, so whether it's, for instance, Jesuits, a Catholic cathedral here in Sydney, and also on Freemasons, Rosicrucians, and many of these other such organisations. Now, I did a video a while back on this same theme, but for instance, the jewel worn by Queen Elizabeth I, now Gunther, John Dee, all these people who around her were master hermeticists, geographers, metrologists. It's even worth noting the red rose, and because we see this, the rosy cross, the Rosicrucians, and again the pelican feeding, piercing its chest and using the blood to feed the young. This is a theme, but it also, a good description of what's actually happening in this particular flask as well. Also important in masonry because, for instance, we have the 18th night of the Rose Croix, of the Rosy Cross of Rosicrucians, and you see it in all sorts of churches, memorials. It's like for the state flag of Louisiana, for instance. Notice the scales as well. Just it is just one of these essential instruments, and also always connected to tools of the craft, as in masonry, and of weights and measures and those things connected to it. For instance, there, the square and the level. Now there's also another link, I'll get to it in the future, but for instance, masons, where we have the tested stone, the cornerstone, which has been squared and leveled. We also have the stone the builders rejected, which is a famous reference back to Solomon's temple. Now there's some who say that this is a connection to the philosopher's stone through alchemy because the impurities in it. So if you make like a stone that had a vein of ore or similar running through it, would not be a good stone for building, and therefore it was rejected by the builders. But these type of stones are the bread and butter of alchemy, metallurgy, and those related techniques and philosophies. Now always coming back to these same emblems, weights and measures, the tools of the trade, astronomy, geometry, arithmetic, and music, of course, and that's what all these guys do. But back to the pelican flask, just like so this picture just has the mother pelican without the child under there. But there are a couple different versions of Clavis Artis, and this particular one, that's said to be Zoroaster on there, but he is credited on the cover there. Zoroaster des Rabbi und Juden, so the rabbi and the Jew, I may point out. Sure, there'll be something to be made of that by some. But now we go back to this portion here, which is in the feature, really important part, Corpus, Anima, Spiritus, and how this applies to alchemy. So I'll just be having this Corpus, Anima, Spiritus, and the symbols connected therein. So this is from Clavis Artis, and what do we have? We have Mercury, the spirit, sulphur, anima, and corpus, salt. And that's what these symbols represent in an alchemical sense. Azoth of a Philosopher's Stone by Basil Valentine, very important character. And his book, but this is just one woodcut of it, but Anima, Spiritus, and Corpus. Heinrich Kunrath, another famous alchemist, early 17th century. And again, amongst all the other little bits and pieces hidden in plain sight, as they say, Corpus, Anima, Spiritus. Also, Heinrich Kunrath, now it's a multi-leveled one, they all are, but this one especially, and so I'm just going to zoom in on that central figure. There's so much going on in his drawing. And where we start with Corpus, Anima, Spiritus, so we have that there. Now we look at the symbols, and 1, 2, and 3, we have those symbols there as well. Salt, mercury, sulphur. Now if we zoom in, so on each of the nipples and on the belly button where we have that rebus as well. Now notice that the mercurial symbol is splitting rebus in two, separating it. That's another repeated theme that will come up for future examination. But with the two nipples and the belly button, and we have the same thing again. Sulphur, salt, and mercury. Now it's so back to Basil Valentine. Is basically the, at least in the European sense, pretty much the father of alchemy and rebus and Azoth and all these terms that go with it. This is from Azoth of Philosophers, also this rebus as well. Now we also have, for instance, Venus, copper, and Mars, iron, as well as Saturn and Jupiter, lead and tin, but gold, the sun, silver, the moon, and Azoth, the primary method of transformation, is mercury, and that is in the literal sense. So important, but also mercurial thinking as well. But again, we have rebus, the alchemical the hermaphrodite coming together, the sun, golden sun, and the moon. Here we see as well. Okay, back to this is one of the cover illustration of Azoth of Philosophers by Basil Valentine, and it's a little bit anyway. But we have sulphur, mercury, and this variation on salt. But we'll get to okay. So it brings us back to Clavis Artis. This was one of the illustrations in there where we have that. Now we also have, this is from the title page, Corpus, Anima, Spiritus, where we see you can apply it to so many others. Now this is also very important in regards to Basil Valentine, and one of the reasons he's so famous is the discovery of hydrochloric acid, even sulphuric acid, but pretty much he's given the credit for. And what we have is the three principles, which he is famous for. He revolutionized alchemy, maybe from earlier writings, but either way, he revolutionized because he moved away from the four elements and he was looking at what's sometimes called the three principles: sulphur, salt, mercury. Corpus, Anima, Spiritus. Sulphur, salt, sulphur, mercury. So we can just see the same symbols. Okay, now, for instance, sulphur, of that which is combustible, which is changed or destroyed, or which at all events disappears during burning or combustion. As where mercury, that which temporarily disappears during burning or combustion, which is disassociated in the burning from the body burnt, which may be recovered, that is to say, that which is volatile. Now, if you're using mercury for silver or gold mining, yeah, okay, but that's now called salt, that which is fixed, the residue of or ash which remains after burning. But salt is stuck. So, for instance, one of the table salt is frozen, That's like what you need to think about it that way. And table salt has a huge melting temperature. You know, it's they in cobalt reactors they want to use salt instead of water, as where water quickly turns from a liquid to a gas. It boils relatively low. Salt is very stable, and this is another. So what is also and so important in modern chemists, that's why they praise Basil Valentine so much, is because he was beginning an early understanding before Mendeleev, but he was starting to understand the properties and the way to divide up the different elements and substances as we're moving more away from the four elements, and similar in sense medicine, the four humors. He was moving towards a much more scientific, if you want to put it that way, aspect, and that's why he's one of the alchemical greats, at least especially in the Western European tradition. And that's why Azov and Rebus and is so important, because he's actually pointing to profound, invaluable discoveries that can be used in every aspect of life. You know, whether it's food, dyes, glues, colouring, and dyes, metallurgy, everything can be, and that's why. But also not just the actual hydrochloric acid, for instance, but also a movement to understand the cosmic rules that define these things, and that's what, because these are written into law by nature. You can't change them, and so that's why they had such a power to philosophy as well, to look at, you know, just like the geometry and math with Plato and Pythagoras. The alchemists were also seeing that there are certain laws that are just repeated, and it's called, you know, and for them, let's just say, well, divine laws, and they were, you know, and that's to be emulated, and that's why the philosophy and the spirituality was added onto it, because that was like, you know, how, you know, as above, so below. So these, you know, this is what's happening. We need to repeat this and look at, you know, and as above, so below, and you know, what's the geometry of the heavens is a geometry on earth, and the chemistry on earth is a chemistry in the heavens. As above, so below. So potassium, or potassium chloride. Now, if you put sulphuric acid into potassium chloride, you know, well, yeah, these are just, you know, so even Basil Valentine is suspected of being Johann Tholde pronunciation, who was a salt manufacturer, and also connected with ammonia, and well, yeah, these are very important discoveries. And so salt, or potassium chloride, table salt, we think of it, sulfur and sulphuric acid, you know, not too hard to make once you've got that, and mercury. Now, mercury is not just the element itself, but as in Azov, it's described as the method of transformation. So I'll get it more into, but yeah, so mercury doesn't literally always mean the actual element mercury. It's also a symbol for transformation as well. So with salt and sulfur, you can get hydrochloric acid. If you what would it be? Putrefaction, or would be fermentation. I'm not sure the exact but yeah, so sulphuric acid, hydrochloric acid, salt manufacture, alchemists developing the hermetic tradition, the scientists of the time. These guys were, you know, either writing the textbooks or inspiring the people who wrote them. And it was top secret knowledge at the you know, you didn't want this getting out because you didn't want your competitors knowing. This was an empire, colonial the empirical period was about to begin, and so whether it was navigation, metallurgy, these were high technology. This was the secret of the time. No, you know, it was just the same. The military and the banks and the corporations keep their secrets. Well, so was one of the reasons for this as well. And yeah, so books very expensive, very rare. But even if they'll still libraries were limited. In regards to access, for instance, as well. But anyway, salt, sulphur and mercury, hydrochloric acid. Credit usually goes to Basil Valentine, but Maria the Jewess is also suspected of doing it, and back to Clavis Artis and all these guys. Yep, so with that, hope you enjoyed and have a good one. A lot more to come in regards to these, and cheers.